Hi there, and welcome to the sixth edition of my Career Stories live series. So today I'm here with Jeff Young. I'm really pleased to have you. So welcome, Jeff.
Namaste. A good
Thank
morning for me. Good afternoon for you.
Definitely. Thank you very much. So as always, please do comment to let us know that you're here, where you're joining from, and feel free to ask us any questions as we go through. So Jeff and I connected on LinkedIn in November 2020. I just looked it up earlier on, and he's been a really great source of information for me about LinkedIn, and he is known as the LinkedIn guru, which we will touch on a bit later. So my basis for these live shows, really, I've always been really interested in what people do and why they do it. So I just really like talking to people about their career paths and how they've got to where they are now. So the aim really is to give people a bit of advice on places to source information and maybe share some career tips. So when I asked Jeff to come on the show, he and I asked her a question: "What is it that you do for work?" Which I do know anyway, but he did. He just said to me, "You do know that I'm retired, right?" Which of course I do. But Jeff, could you just start by giving us a bit of an overview of what you did in your early career?
Um, Basically, I started out as a computer programmer back in the 70s timeframe.
Okay.
That early career was really based on the fact that I had a guidance counselor who pointed me in that direction. And it turned out, and I didn't know that much about it. And actually, back in the 70s, this is even before the personal computer. So this kind of thing was actually corporate, computing kind of things, big machines in big rooms and
Oh,
different.
wow.
Yeah, and so getting into that and involved in that and going to school for that at least got me out into the job market faster than if I'd gone to a 4-year degree. I actually got an associate degree to get there.
Oh, okay.
And it turned into something that I really enjoyed, but I didn't know I was going to enjoy it at the time. The thing that I enjoyed most about it was the sense of accomplishment of getting a machine to do what you wanted it to do. And I'm still that way. I sometimes describe myself as a recovering IT geek. Okay, uh,
Excellent.
because of the fact that I've been involved in information technology from even before it was even called information technology. But earlier, that's what I did earlier, and that turned into a lot of other things after being a computer programmer, becoming a project manager, becoming a management consultant, et cetera.
Excellent. A couple of people saying hello. So we've got Temitope Deborah from Canada, hiya. And we've got Craig saying Bonnie Scotland in the house. So thank you. Thanks for
Namaste, brother.
commenting. Excellent. So I mean that you just taken me back, Jeff, to computer studies in the sixth form, where all the binaries, the ones and the zeros, and all of that kind of programming stuff.
Well, and Sarah, it's so old school. I mean, the words that I used to describe it from back then don't even exist anymore to some extent. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to program in something called assembler language code,
Okay.
whatever that was. Nobody's going
Yeah.
to even know what I'm talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Some folks might have actually heard, if they're actually studying any kind of information technology history, they might have heard of things like COBOL,
Yeah.
COBOL. Yeah,
Yeah.
it actually stood for Common Business Oriented Language, COBOL. Okay, so and I don't even know whether they still do uh, COBOL anymore. Now it is such a individualized, app-based, mobile society kind of thing that it's not, the languages are totally different and the environment is totally different. And honest to goodness, I really wouldn't want to be in IT right now because of what I see happening. Let's back to LinkedIn, because of what I see happening on LinkedIn. I mean,
Mm.
having to support over 880 million users with a website, that's not easy. And
No, no,
they
totally.
do a pretty good job about it. But anyway,
Yeah.
hey,
And we got
thanks,
Kevin in.
brother.
So hi, Kevin. So Kevin's actually coming on in April, so that'd be good to catch up with Kevin then. And
You're
John
early
from
September
Chicago.
too.
So there you go. John was on a few weeks ago. So this is great seeing everyone popping in.
Thank you.
Okay, so you touched then on about management consultants. So I was just interested in what that was like. I know from when I used to manage graduate programs and kind of speak to graduates, they used to, some of them being a bit of shock almost, that they had to go through this like really intense selection process and see who could stay up the number of hours in the night and all of that kind of stuff. But what was it really like? What was it like for you?
Well, for me, it was kind of something that I lucked into, if you will. It was one of the things that happened where I had a recruiter at the time, and I want to talk about milestones later, but let's just talk about the management consulting job for right now. I had a recruiter who was helping me find a job, and that recruiter said, "Have you ever thought of working for?" At the time, he mentioned Arthur Young. Okay, and I went, "Wait a minute, I think I've heard of Arthur Young. Isn't that an accounting firm?" Okay. And he said, yes, but they also have started this new thing. And this wasn't until the 84 to 86 timeframe. They've started this new thing called management consulting.
Mm.
So it ended up for me being computer consulting. So when he,
Okay.
and I said, well, can I even do that? And he said, yeah, they'd hire someone like you because they need your kind of skills as well. So I went ahead and said, okay, sure, I'll talk to them. And that ended up being a 16-year piece of my career, a long time. Now, what was it like? I loved it because of the variety. Okay, it was great because a lot of things that you do in your life are good news, bad news. Okay, good news for me was it was paid well. That's always a good thing, especially if you want to retire early, okay, which is what I ended up being able to do. Secondly, the good thing was variety. I got to work for a huge number of different clients, banks, insurance companies. I even worked for a defense contractor here in the United States and a law firm for that matter. We did claims litigation support for a law firm as an example. So all of that was great from a variety standpoint. The bad piece of this was that I was on the road 85% of the time. I actually was working 70 to 80 hours a week because management consulting firms are sometimes notorious for trying to burn you to a crisp. Okay? And but again, I enjoyed it well enough, and it also fit my lifestyle because I had never had kids, and I had seen some of my friends. I mean, here's again, thinking about a career choice like this. It was great for new, younger people growing up, not starting a family yet, maybe getting married and having a spouse. But when they had the first kid, the pressure starts to get on. When they had the second kid, most of my friends who had second kids left. Okay?
Yeah.
And I never left. I ended up not having any kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So it's interesting, isn't it? You sort of said a chance conversation almost that someone said, "Have you thought of this?" and then it ended up into a 16-year thing. And I think that's the thing with careers, isn't it? It's something that seems quite a small conversation just ends up changing your life totally.
It's all about networking. In this case, it happened to be networking with a recruiter.
Yeah, excellent. So Kevin's just saying Cobalt is in demand for government work on legacy systems. So there you go, Jeff. Still out there. Yeah, apparently so.
I'm really surprised that Cobalt is still around. It's amazing. I mean, the fanciest language we ever used back then, and I have no idea if it even exists now, is something called Fortran, which is a very scientifically oriented language.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Oh, very interesting. Okay, so you then sort of talked in your LinkedIn profile, you've got management consultant, HR consultant, project management. So what kind of prompted all of those moves?
I was thinking about this. It kind of came to me actually overnight. I woke up and when you wake up, you start thinking about what you're doing for the day. And I was thinking about coming to talk with you, and it occurred to me that the best way to explain this is kind of like as an analogy. Okay, so Charles Dickens wrote a book called Tale of Two Cities. Okay.
Yep.
And it starts out, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Okay, so again, the good news, bad news story. Well, it's kind of the same thing for me. As my transitions happen, there are actually three major milestones in my life. And I would call my book A Tale of Two Downsizings. Okay, because I got downsized twice in my life. Okay, so from the first one was to become a management consultant. Okay.
Right. Okay.
I worked for 7 years for an organization here that was actually based in Columbus, Ohio, a rather large $4 to $5 billion company at the time called Borden Incorporated. Borden, the milk people, Elsie the cow. You may have heard.
Yep.
of it. Okay, Borden used to do foods. Okay, so I was with them for 7 years. Unfortunately, in the 6th year, I made the mistake of changing from the foods division, which was making money, to the chemical division, which wasn't making money. And when
Right.
I had to downsize about a year later, I didn't have any seniority, so I was one of the first to go. Now, I got to tell you what. Again, here the good news. The good news is, in essence, in short, the good news is that it led to my management consulting career with Arthur Young and Ernst and Young.
Yeah.
So that's the great news because, and I think that's really true of every single time that any of those milestones that I'm going to talk about has happened. When I got downsized, I went on to something that was much better for me.
Mm.
Okay, and those changes were much better for me. But it was devastating to me. I'd gotten stellar reviews for 7 years in a row, longest I'd spent with an organization. And I'm looking at that, and they're going to take me and they're going to throw me out in the street. And it's a terrible thing because you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, where's that second head? I've got to have a
Mm.
second head. There's something wrong with me, right? Well, as it turns out, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay. You still have the talents. Every single time that I've ever been downsized, it's been an economic move
Yeah.
by the organization, not a performance move, as far as I'm concerned. Okay.
Mm.
So don't think it's your problem. And by the way, back in in '85, when I was downsized first, again, the bad news is that it was a stigma back then because it was unusual back then. Now it's standard operating procedure for most
Yeah.
organizations. They end up doing it all the time. So back then, it was something that I really had to deal with emotionally, but I ended up finding myself in management consulting with, okay, again, Ernst and Young eventually. Okay, Arthur Young to start with, Ernst and Young eventually. Okay, now the second, so that's the part of the good news, bad news story. Okay, the second thing in terms of management consulting was the good news is the variety. The good news is, the bad news is traveling for a living, being from out of town. And by the way, as a management consultant, that's the definition of an expert: somebody who's from more than 50 miles away. So working with those different clients was great, but
Yeah.
working really very hard. Now, again, one of the great things is a small transition inside of Arthur Young Ernst and Young was that I spent 9 years being an IT consultant, okay, building computer systems for corporations and people and et cetera, right? At about that 9th year, I had the luck of being farmed out to the organizational development area. Here we come into
Oh,
the HR bit.
okay. HR then. Yeah.
Yeah, so now I've got farmed out for a specific program called the Engagement Director Program, okay, to the organizational development arm, which was called Professional and Organizational Development, P&OD. We called ourselves pod people, actually. Well, and once I got farmed out to that, I really liked what I was doing. This was an opportunity within the same organization to kind of like stay the same church, but switch pews, okay, if you will. And after I got finished with that engagement director program, that sabbatical, and came back to the real consulting, if you will, out in the field life, okay, I actually thought so much about that I decided to go to those folks and say, excuse me, how would you like to have a guy who's got 9 years worth of street creds, okay, help you teach consultants about how to be consultants? And they said, well, let us think about it. Okay. It didn't take them long because they loved that idea and they loved the work that I'd done. They get to see what I had done on the engagement
Yeah.
program, et cetera, right? So now I'm switching into the administration of, and ultimately that ended up, as far as my career is concerned, as far as management consulting is concerned, being responsible for all of the onboarding training that was done for the consulting practice within Ernst & Young.
Okay.
So we got to do some neat things like what we called a college entry program, okay, which was bring the new shiny-faced consultants out of college into the organization and indoctrinate them, right, all the way up to the new partners that would join the firm, okay, and become a part of Ernst & Young as well. And I'll tell you what, if you want a challenge, try to teach a partner within a Big Four consulting firm anything. Okay, look, they didn't get to be a partner by doing stuff wrong.
Yeah.
and you're telling them, we want you to do it this way. And they're going, why?
Yeah.
Why would I change what I do? Okay. So, from an organizational change standpoint, it was a challenge. I mean, that old commercial with EDS I think about EDS that's talking about herding cats. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
And so
seriously good influencing skills then.
so you had to prove to them that your way of doing things was actually better. So it
Mm,
ended up being actually better. Okay.
that's excellent.
Should I pause you? I mean,
No, that's cool. It's really good. And I
you
think you made a really good point about the downsizing and redundancy. And there's always this thing about, oh, it's not personal, but of course it's personal for the person it's happening to. And I think most people I speak to end up, well, I'd say almost everyone actually ends up with something better afterwards, but it definitely doesn't feel like that at the time. And I
sure
remember
does.
I left my role 20 years ago, my last employed role, through redundancy. I'd actually ticked the box to say I wanted redundancy, so it was no surprise. But even then, I kind of thought, well, why are they not fighting to keep me? Because you just have this really weird emotional roller coaster going on.
Why am
So
I not? Yeah, why am I not worth that? Right?
yeah,
They keep telling me I'm so great. Why wouldn't they keep? Why don't they like me anymore?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So
And,
it's definitely personal,
yeah,
but and everyone needs to get through it in their own way, don't they?
right.
Got a few more
Well,
comments coming up. So,
okay.
Craig is saying he remembers both COBOL and Fortran. There you go.
I should have known.
And Kevin, government work still around. The FFA crash has some COBOL coding. Okay.
That's unbelievable. That's still
Yeah.
exists. That's amazing.
Juliet is saying she's joining
Yeah.
from London. Hi, Juliet. And John Asperian is saying,
Ah,
great to see us. Thanks for the call.
namaste.
It's Friday Superman photo earlier, Jeff. Very good.
Yeah, yeah. John was doing his Friday shout shirt, but he was doing it.
Uh,
It was great. It looked really super, John.
yeah,
Wonderful.
excellent. So there's lots and lots on your LinkedIn profile about voluntary work as well. So, and you've done that kind of throughout your career, haven't you? So how do you go about choosing who you're going to work with?
I think you have to look at your values and match your values to an organization's values as well. Ultimately, even the second downsizing for me was actually from Ernst & Young, and so being in the downsizing environment, and a reason I want to mention this is kind of where it ties into the voluntary work a lot, because I've been with Ernst & Young for 16 years. Okay, and again, I could see the handwriting on the wall, but I've been with the firm for 16 years, and I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'm making good money. I'm not going anywhere until they tell me that. I could see the handwriting on the wall because the management changed, and
Yeah, yeah.
and when management changes, then they clean house, sometimes, et cetera, right? So ultimately, I stayed for about 16 years, and they ended up downsizing me in June of 2001. Okay, bad news again, right? All right. Well, the good news is I've been downsized before, so I knew what this drill was about. I got my resume. I mean,
Mhm.
this is way long before, obviously, LinkedIn or anything like that. So I'm doing my resume, getting my resume in order, putting the word out, starting the networking, cranking the networking machine, et cetera. Okay, and downsized in July of 2001. And I was doing real well. Things were cooking, and I had things going. But then this thing called September 11th, 2001 happened. 9/11.
Mm,
Do I look shorter? I should, because it cut me off right at the knees. Okay. It just took the market and said nothing is going to happen.
mm,
Okay. So what ended up ultimately a piece of the bad news, but again, it leads to good news, is that I ended up looking for my next job for 14 months. Now that's a long time. So if you are going to be in the market for that amount of time, one of the things that you need to do is you need to find something that keeps your skills up. And that's where the volunteer work comes in. So
okay.
I found organizations that could help me teach. I could teach things at an organization that ultimately became known as something called Career Transition Institute. Hey, again, my HR background and those types of
Yeah,
things. Okay, that way I'm really doing a lot of what you did. Only we did it for folks in the local Columbus, Ohio area.
yeah,
Okay, all those folks that got into that environment, we provided three things. We provided an infrastructure. We actually provided an office for them to come to and look for work. We provided training to get trained on how to find the work, and we provided support, including psychological support and having sessions that were mentally health focused, okay, once a week to say, are things going okay? How you doing? How can we help one another? Okay, so that's my values. That's how that matched as far as my values is concerned. And it also matched from the standpoint of my values of what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's this concept of something called ikigai. Okay,
Yeah.
Japanese concept, and it's an amazing concept. It's kind of like what you do well, what you can get paid for, what the world needs, and what you love to do. Okay, and I found that several times in my life, but it changed over time. And the volunteer work helped me find that, because that's just as good an experience, as long as you can convince people of that, right? Because I was also I didn't really face a lot of it, but when I got up there in that second downsizing, I was older in my life as well, getting close to and becoming close to quote unquote retirement age. So when you hit the 50 or the 50 plus, okay, then you start dealing with things that are like, when you are going to look for a job, that employer will look at you and go, how long are you going to stay around? Are you going to be loyal to us? Are you going to be loyal to us? Not that they have to be loyal to anybody, as far as employees is concerned, sometimes it seems like, right? But it's a challenge from that perspective to make sure that you use your age and your experience as an asset. Okay?
Yeah.
And I love acronyms. And I just thought of this one the other day. Asset, age is an asset. Always something special, always some special experience taught. Okay, ASSET.
Yeah.
So it's about experience and those kind of things. So I chose organizations that matched my values. I chose organizations that could help me keep my skills up, okay, and do that until eventually I found the HR consulting job, which I ended up. I was actually an executive recruiter for about a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually an executive recruiter here locally.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah. That's interesting. And I think the voluntary work is so important. And I'll just add something to that in a second. So Paul's saying he's a bit late here, but he's sat in the kitchen. So actually, as Paul's just popped up, he started doing some voluntary work for a local museum, the Rowan Museum in Henley, which he absolutely loved, and was doing some social media stuff there. And then they actually offered him a job. So you never know where these voluntary things are going to end up. So apart from it gives you a bit of focus, it gives you something to do. You can maybe try something out that you wouldn't normally get to do in your paid work. Exactly. And there's so many stories of people that have succeeded in making that either part of or all of their permanent work. So
it's important. If it wasn't important, Sarah, LinkedIn wouldn't create a section for it on
exactly. Yeah,
it's a totally separate section that talks about volunteer work, and it's just as valid as the experience section.
Definitely. So Craig is giving Paul a bit of abuse for being late. And then he's come back to say he was helping number 2 some of his efforts to get work. And now Craig's forgiving Paul. So it is great. There's a conversation going on here. Juliet saying 14 months is a long time to be looking for work. Great point about engaging. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Well, and if it hadn't been for in essence, one of those organizations that I volunteered for, it was also helping me find a job as well. Oh, yeah. The asset agreement. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't been for that organization, by the end of 14 months, I'd have been a basket case. I mean, I would have been so lost and give up, and et cetera. So the volunteer work actually helped keep me sane and helped me focus on what I wanted to do and keep moving forward, which is an important thing.
Yeah. And I get the other thing with volunteering as well. You get to try things out, and then actually, if it doesn't work, then you've ticked something off your list, haven't you? You've given it a go, and if it doesn't work out, then great.
Yep. There are a lot of in early career. I mean, that kind of thing, interestingly enough, is starting to move forward or earlier in people's careers. There's a lot of high school programs that allow people to go out on actual, not internships, but try particular kinds of organizational interests that they think they might want to be when they grow up. Okay.
Yeah.
Try it to see what it's really like before they get to, because what that can help them do is actually focus them in terms of where they might want to go and what kind of education they might want to get in the first place, right? Instead of just going to college and studying something because they got to go to college and have a degree.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's a really good point. So I was going to go on to a bit about your work now as LinkedIn guru, but do you want to first of all just touch on retiring, I guess? So when
Sure.
did you retire? How did you know it was time? All of
Well,
that kind of stuff.
yeah, no, that's a great segue into the LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The HR consulting bit, the executive recruiter career bit, okay. Actually, interestingly enough, that lasted for about a year, and I became really good friends. And one of the reasons I got that job is because my background was Ernst and Young, and one of the partners in that executive recruiting firm's background was Accenture. So they, we thought alike. We knew,
Yeah.
so it worked out quite well. But interestingly enough, one of the things that I never wanted to be in my entire career was a salesperson. And that HR recruiting, that executive recruiting gig was a commission sales. I didn't get paid
Right.
unless I
Okay.
got the
Yeah.
client, I matched the client, et cetera. Okay. So after about a year of that, I went and told them, you know what, this is fun and I like you guys, but I'm not making a lot of money at this and I'm not really enjoying it from the sales standpoint. So let's just part it as friends, and I'll go make not very much money someplace else. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately interestingly enough, so then I semi-retired. Okay.
Okay.
So for about the next 10 to 11 months, I was semi-retired, just doing the volunteer work and looking around, but not very, very seriously, right? Interestingly enough, when you stop looking for something, sometimes it pops up and goes, "Hi, I'm right here." Okay, and literally, here's where networking comes into this, because I got my final career of about 3+ years because of a lady that I had networked with in 1995, who recognized me and knew me well enough. That's the whole thing. People who get to know you, and if you get to know other people, you can find them what they need pretty quickly and pretty easily.
Yeah.
She noticed, because she was doing project management training at a local organization, and she noticed that they were looking for something that they called an enterprise project manager. And when she looked at the job description of that, she went, "Wow, that's Jeff Young." Okay. And then so she contacted me and showed it to me. And I looked at it and went, "Wow, that's Jeff Young." Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So it was like this is my perfect job. I'm actually going to get my ideal job if these folks will actually hire me, right?
Yeah.
So I applied for it, went through the rigmarole, etc. Long story short is I did get that job. It was a perfect job for me because it was 50% managing projects across the entire enterprise. That's why they call it an enterprise project manager.
Yeah.
Multi-million-dollar projects across the enterprise. And then 50% teaching people in the organization how to do the best project management they can. 50% working, 50% teaching. Ta-da! I found myself, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
And and they had hired me, and one of the things they hired me to do, and now let's transition into retirement. They hired me to actually create for them what's something called a project management office. Okay. PMO usually.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is a service center of people that are farmed out and they manage projects. They're kind of like a utility, baseball team. They'll go to any position you want and they'll manage that project. Okay. And I did create that. And ultimately, unfortunately, what that did was work myself out of a job. Because as a part of the criteria for creating that PMO and the people who were housed in that PMO and the skill sets that were housed in that PMO, we decided as an organization, and I was a part of that decision, that they all needed to have something called a PMP, a certification called Project Management Professional. I had 30 years worth of project management experience. I got my PMP through the School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Okay. But I didn't have a PMP certification, and I was again getting closer and closer to retirement.
Mm.
It was only about a year, before I was well. And when I actually hired on, one of the upfront things that I told this organization, which was actually called OCLC, it stood for Online Computer Library Center here in Columbus, Ohio, a nonprofit of about 250 million a year. And I told them that I would spend the next 3 to 5 years with them, and then we would part ways. Well, that's actually ended up being a little over 3 years. Okay. Is that
Craig saying he's worked himself out of a job a few
yeah,
times as well. Yeah.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, the good news,
Yeah.
bad news here, right? The
Yeah.
reason I worked myself out of a job is because they wanted to get me to get a PMP. And I went to my boss, who, by the way, I just had lunch with. Okay, even though I left them at the end of 2007, I just had lunch with over the Christmas holiday. My former
Oh,
boss.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Still become great friends with these folks. And I went to my boss and I said, you know what? It's a waste of my time and your money for you to spend money to get me a project management certification. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll help you find a replacement for me, and that will already have a PMP, and then you and I can part as friends, and I can retire like I planned on doing in the first place. So that's exactly
Excellent.
what happened.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah.
It was fun and it was amazing. I love people, talking about their experience because everybody's story is different. But
Yeah.
I think you can learn from everybody's story as well. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now when I get to retirement, we'll tie a bow on this very, very quickly. I think we're
Yeah.
probably getting to
There you go. So yeah. So now as LinkedIn guru,
yeah, exactly. We'll tie a bow on this. When I retired,
I'll just put your page up here.
thank you. When I retired, we'll click that follow button. Actually,
Yeah.
it won't be a follow button for you because you and I are
Yeah.
connected. So
We're already connected, but yes.
when I retired, I knew I still wanted to network, and retirement never meant going to play golf or fishing or something like that to me. It would be just the next chapter, and I could do some more. Okay, so when I asked my network when I retired, what was the best tool I could use as far as networking is concerned? By that time, when I retired in 2007, okay, or eight, the beginning of 2008, okay, I'd been on LinkedIn for 3 or 4 years, but I'd done nothing with it. But every single person said, if you want to network with other professionals, LinkedIn is it. It is
Yeah.
okay. It is absolutely the best professional social media and networking tool in the world. And I said, that's great. I need to know how to work with this. I need to how to do this. So being the teacher that I am, okay, the process I went through is that the best way for me to learn LinkedIn is to start to teach it to other people. And that's in essence how I started using LinkedIn, started teaching LinkedIn, and now it's 15 years later and 900 to 1,000 seminars later, and, et cetera. And by the
Yeah.
way, just something I was going to do as a volunteer kind of thing anyway, because I was retired. I didn't need the money. I could do it that way and teach it that way.
Yeah.
And to tie a bow on the LinkedIn Guru bit, okay, literally someone who had come to several of my seminars, a friend walked up to me after one of those seminars, shook his finger at me and said, you know what, Jeff, you're a real guru at this. And I went, guru, I like the sound.
Like that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, and then when I
Yeah.
look it up, okay, guru in the dictionary says teacher.
Mm.
Ding, here I am again. I've got my ideal job. That's me. I should
Yeah.
be the LinkedIn guru. So he called me the LinkedIn guru. Thank goodness I didn't call myself that, because that would be putting on too many airs. There is no such thing as a LinkedIn expert. I'm not a LinkedIn expert. I can't know everything about everything, but I can teach you a lot about LinkedIn because I've been on LinkedIn for such a long period of time. I made
Yeah.
a farmer's joke the other day. Farmers Insurance here, they say, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. That's me as far as LinkedIn is concerned. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you for
if
the
you don't
opportunity.
already, then do follow Jeff. As I said, he's got so much knowledge. It's and really, really generous and excellent newsletter. So yeah, follow Jeff if you're not already doing that. So we're running pretty short of time now. So I just wanted to quickly touch on values, which we have mentioned already. So everyone so far that I've had on has talked a bit about their values when either looking for work or finding clients. So is that something that you think of consciously now?
Yeah, it's something that, again, one of my values is lifelong learning. Okay.
Yeah.
One of my values is passing on knowledge and teaching it to other people.
Yeah.
So those are values that I'm living now in retirement, and I couldn't be happier. I mean, I am a very happy camper, and I sometimes illustrate that because, thank you. I sometimes illustrate that because I'm saying, look, LinkedIn can be a success to anyone. Okay. And I'm pretty much proof of that, because if an old retired guy can do something with it like me, anybody can do something with it. Okay. No matter what your goals are as far as LinkedIn is concerned. And
Yeah.
that's another thing that's a value of mine is set your goals for you. What is
Mm.
it that you want to move toward every single
Yeah.
time? You got to have a
Yeah.
target. Otherwise, the old adage of, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Okay,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. That's
So
good.
LinkedIn has helped me identify a target audience and help a target audience and build a following, and it's been fantastic for me. So
Yeah.
those values of learn constantly. There's an old quote, I think, by Gandhi that talks about, is like learn as if you're going to live forever. Okay, it's just you never stop.
Yeah. No, that's good. So I wanted to just ask one question, just 'cause I'm conscious there's quite a lot of graduates I know at the moment that are applying for jobs as management consultants. So, and again, we've talked a little bit about this, but any advice that you'd give for people who are wanting to start out in that career?
I think that if you're going to do that, you've got to be a person who likes variety. I think that you should make sure that you also check out the management consulting firm and check out the culture of that
Yeah.
firm. I found that Ernst& Young was a very people-oriented culture. As a matter of fact, one of my small pieces of my career was being a mentor to 4 to 5 different people that I did not manage, okay, inside of Ernst& Young, and helping them on a quarterly basis. By the way, this is unusual too. We did quarterly performance reviews. Okay, so it's not like an annual performance review. We did quarterly, which was then done in an annual promotional
Yeah.
performance review.
Yeah.
So monitor what that's about, monitor what the organization culture is about, and be willing to, especially if you're younger, be willing to spend a lot of time at it, because a management consulting firm demands that you spend a lot of time being focused on the client. Okay,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
means you're not focused on yourself, and so
Yeah.
you may have to make some sacrifices to get where you need to get, like I
Yeah.
did, in terms of
Yeah.
the time that you actually spend on the job. But
So go in with your eyes open,
yeah,
and I
but
think the research, this is the
but
thing, LinkedIn is fantastic for this, isn't it? You can very easily get access to people in these roles, look at the organisation, see what their culture appears to be like.
And I got to tell you though that I would, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again as well.
Yeah,
'Cause Those
that's good.
16 years, those 16 years were great 16 years worth of my life. I learned so much.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a couple of more comments. So Craig is saying, "You're absolutely beautiful. You're okay too, Sarah." So thank you, Craig.
Oh,
John saying, "Great conversation." And
thank you.
as scary as the long career break feels, it seems that they help us find places where our values align. So that's excellent. So yeah, John was looking for a new role for a while, and I know he's settled now. So that's
That's
excellent.
brilliant, John, because never lose hope. No matter how long, there is still the possibility, if you still continue to network, that somebody will actually help you, like my illustration, find you your ideal job. Okay?
Yeah,
You will find it. You can find it.
excellent.
It can be done.
Definitely, definitely. Another comment. Is there an archive on past career stories that Sarah has published? Yeah, so Q, I will. They're all on my page, but I'm going to kind of produce a list that's got them all. So I will do that and let you know where it is. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so we are about out of time now. So thank you again, Jeff, for coming on, and thank you to everyone watching. It's been an excellent session. I've learned loads about you, Jeff. It's been really interesting, and I think actually we've got a fairly similar career path as well. So I've definitely been involved in most of the things that you've talked about, apart from actually working in a management consultancy. But I was in a company doing internal consultancy. So yeah, it's been really good. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I always enjoy having a conversation with you, whether it's Zoom 101 or whether it's.
Exactly. Yeah,
I very
it's
much
cool.
appreciate the opportunity. Namaste.
Namaste. So next week I'm going to be back with Annette Richmond, who
Oh,
is
yeah,
based in New
that one.
York. So yeah, I was on Annette's show last year sometime. So Annette helps executives and entrepreneurs outshine their competitors by building their personal brands. So she's given me a big background of things that she used to do. So again, it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation. So Paul's saying also here, great conversation on off screen. So I think he was listening to our conversation before we went live. Okay. Craig is saying he feels like he knows you even better. Brilliant session. And Diana, thank you. Very inspirational. So thank you. Thank you so much for all of the comments. They're coming in thick and fast now. So Hugh,
Well,
thank you very much, both of you.
thank you. That's very gratifying. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you. So I will go on and answer all of the comments later. So anyone that's watching on catch up, then please do feel free to ask questions. And I'm sure Jeff wouldn't mind going and answering any if you've got any questions of him either. So thanks again. And I will see you next week. So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much.